Out of 26 orders of insects, aphids belong to the most popular, most well-spread 8. And together with mealybugs, scales and whiteflies, aphids can be the most destructive pests in our gardens. And Rosarians are blessed with aphids which are targeting only roses. They are rose-specific pests. So today we are talking about aphids. I truly believe that in order to control any pest in the garden, we need to know about the life cycle of those enemies of ours and control them at the time where they can be easily not eradicated. We can't really eradicate all the pests. According to IPM, which is Integrated Pest Management, a very advisable approach towards the gardening, and we will talk about it later, we have to strive to keep those harmful bugs in our garden on low minimums, not to eradicate them at all. So when we do our morning or afternoon tours around the garden, we kind of keep an eye on what's happening, because infestations, especially aphid infestations, can happen very quickly if not noticed at the beginning. And the destruction, especially on roses, can be very quick, since roses are decorative flowers. And if we don't see all the sucking aphids on our buds, those buds can be damaged very quickly. So let's talk about the life cycle of aphids. Aphids are numerous. There are around 4,000 different aphids, and only 10% out of them can live on different plants. The rest of 90% of 4,000 are very host specific. So there are aphids which are eating roses, aphids which are eating, hollies, aphids which are eating trees. And of course, Rosarians are blessed with rose aphids, which are targeting only roses. And they are sap-sucking insects, soft-bodied insects. And the strength of aphids is that they can multiply very quickly, but their weakness is that they are soft-bodied insects and they are very easy to kill. Aphids on roses are usually green, and they are spread throughout the planet, so every corner of the planet has aphids. And since there are 4,000 of them, every garden will have them. And a lot of gardeners are familiar with them. So what is the life cycle of an aphid? Aphids have many generations, and they usually emerge in spring. They are visible in spring and at the end of growing season, and I will tell you why later. And then female aphids do lay eggs on stems and leaves, the bottom of leaves. New aphids are born, they start their sucking destruction. At the end of the season, the male aphids show up. Usually in the middle of the season there are females flying around. When they get their wings, they lay their eggs and the season is over. And why do we see aphids only at the beginning of the growing season and at the end? Well, aphids are very attracted to nitrogen. And nitrogen is usually present at the stage where plants are actively growing and on the growing tips or growing buds. That's where usually we see aphids on our roses. Come here, I will show you. So at the beginning of the growing season, nitrogen is strongly present and aphids are multiplying very quickly. Nitrogen encourages their growth and they accumulate on those beautiful juicy buds our roses are creating. And if we are missing the infestation, those aphids can really damage our plants. The nitrogen peak happens when our roses are just pushing those fresh blooms. Then nitrogen subsides, the level. And then at the end of the season, when roses are getting ready for dormancy, the nitrogen reaches its second, much lower peak, and then we can see adult aphids more in the garden. So that's how aphids operate. Now let's talk about IPM, the pest management approach in the gardens. IPM is very recommended for the gardeners, and what it is we are very watchful what's happening in the garden, and we apply the least toxic approach at the best time to help gardens thrive and get rid of infestations. And it's up to the gardener how much damage they can tolerate. And very often, since aphids have a lot of predators, plus us, and they can be easily destroyed, aphids usually reach a peak of their numbers and then predators arrive. And that can be very difficult for the gardener to wait for those predators, especially ladybugs are the first ones, for them to arrive and start destroying the population of aphids. And usually if that time between aphids population explosion and arrival of predators is long, several weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, not 2 to 3 days, and gardener cannot tolerate the amount of aphids, that's when we intervene. And of course I will tell you about all the products we can use on our beautiful roses to make sure that blooms are happening and they're not destroyed by all the bugs which are targeting these beautiful blooms. I'm just looking at these buds, covered with aphids. Let me see if I can destroy them here. So what can the gardener do to deal with these pests? Well, plenty of options. And usually I focus on organic options because they're so helpful, and aphids are soft-bodied, so they are very easily destroyed. So the first option would be water. And I do understand that some gardeners have big gardens and they cannot drag the hose all the way to the rose which is blooming 1 acre away, so that might be not the option for a lot of gardeners, but a strong shoot of water can dislocate those aphids, and when they fall to the ground they really cannot go back to the rose and they die. The stream of water is very good and it gets rid of all that population of aphids for that day, but it doesn't get rid of all the future populations, so you have to repeat it over and over again, and it's not really helpful when you have a lot of roses and a lot of infestation. So we are moving to step number 2. Insecticidal soap. Very benign, very harmless to the user because you're going to spray it there, and it can be easily applied. It's not harmful to bees. It quickly evaporates from the surface of the leaves and it kills on contact, again, that generation, that day. And you have to reapply insecticidal soap over and over again, which can be a problem if you have a big garden. In my case, my collection of roses is not big, only 30 roses, something like 12 different varieties. I want to focus on one more practice in the garden. I don't want to forget. If you want to effectively control aphids in the garden, you should control the population of ants, the presence of ants in the garden. And why is it? Well, aphids, when they suck the sap from the rose buds, they ingest so much juice, so much sap, that they have to spill it out, basically poop it out. And that sap attracts a lot of ants because it's honeydew. And aphids are not the only insects which extract the honeydew. So what does honeydew do? It falls on the surface of the leaves, and aphids don't do anything about it. Usually it happens where they eat. Honeydew sticks to the surface of the leaves. Ants love that sugary substance, and they will go so far as actively protecting the colonies of aphids against aphids predators like ladybugs. And they will, usually you see aphids together with ants, and ants are very protective of all those aphids. So if you want to control the population of aphids and let the predators have their fill on those colonies, make sure that you don't have a lot of ants in the garden. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, when you want something stronger, insecticidal soap is not really helping or it's too weak, we can move further into the neem oil. Neem oil, I must say, it's a little bit stronger. You should really spray it when the plant is well hydrated, in the morning or in the evening when bees are not there. And what neem oil does, it interrupts the life cycle, eating habits of aphids, their mating habits. So if you spray neem oil, you wouldn't see dead aphids all right away. Neem oil wouldn't kill them on contact, but they will be gone in several days. So these are fairly good, organic, low impact, low toxic solutions which you can use in the garden. And again, I don't see the reason why you should go into a much stronger sprays, since aphids are so easily, can be so easily killed. But you definitely can look into systemic products. I am not using them in my garden. I try to run my garden organically. And since I would not be recommending any systemic products here. One more thing about aphids and honeydew. What honeydew does, since it covers the surface of the leaves, and very often in the garden, and it's not about roses, leaves on different plants can look dirty, or there's a lot of dust on it. That's not dust. Don't even think that leaves of the plants can get dirty. That's honeydew, which sits there for some time and then mold joins in. And the presence of that dark mold is really not harmful for the plants. The leaves get very dark and they prevent the leaf to collect the sun rays. And basically the plant looks like it's in shade because of all that pollution on the leaves. Plant cannot basically collect all the sun rays. That can happen with roses very rarely. You can see rose leaves getting dark, but it can happen on other plants. So sooty mold is present in the garden, and when you see dark, dirty leaves, it means that there are sucking insects on your plant. And it's up to you how much of infestation you can tolerate. Majority of the plants tolerate fairly medium amount of infestation fairly well. But again, look at these roses. They are so highly decorative. And my generous gardener is ready to finish the first wave of blooms. Another one will come strongly afterwards. And I'm going to deadhead this rose. I should keep you posted about deadheading too. And all these petals are falling down. Oh, I love this rose. So, my dear gardeners, don't be discouraged when you have a lot of aphids in your garden. They can be controlled. And now, hopefully, thanks to this video, you will know how to do it. I want to wish you the most success in your garden. Enjoy your gardens. And as usual, don't forget to put your nose into a flower today. And I have plenty of roses blooming in my garden this season, so it would be very easy for me to do. And I'm sure you have it too. So happy gardening, and we will see you again.